I'm Amanda Knox.
And I'm Christopher Robinson.
And this
is Who's Right? Between our usual Labyrinths episodes, we sit down to debate something quite serious.
Or silly.
And ask you, who is right?
It's me.
It's me.
It's me.
It's clearly me.
No, definitely me.
It's me.
Me?
No, me.
It's me.
How could it be anyone but me?
Says the man sleeping on the couch.
All right, so you want to do some drugs?
Always. I mean, look at me.
You do look like a boomer's casting description of a 1993 drug user.
Yes. Notably not a drug dealer, a drug user.
It's true.
So we're arguing today about whether or not drugs should be legalized.
Yeah, our last episode with Ethan Russo got me thinking about reevaluating my stance on drug legalization.
Okay, before you say anything, I want to claim a stance.
Do it.
Which is that I'm all about the decriminalization, but I'm not sure I'm all about the legalization. And let me tell you why.
Please do.
I do not think that, so one, I think that like many substances are perfectly benign, like mushrooms,
peanut butter,
are benign. However, the substances that can have an impact on your mind or your body in a significant way, like medications or whatever, it makes sense to me that if there is a danger of a person misusing that substance, whatever it may be, including alcohol, including sugar, all of that, there should be some boundaries put into place to protect people from themselves. And I know that sounds like the least libertarian thing I could possibly say.
It's very paternalistic.
It's extremely paternalistic, but let's also be real. You can become addicted to substances and they can take over your life.
It's true.
And I think that the difference between decriminalization and legalization is when it's decriminalized, you're not being punished for having an addiction. But when it's legalized, other people can profit off of exploiting your addictions. And that's where I'm like, I don't know if I love there being no boundaries to the way that people can exploit anybody's addictions so that they can just profit off of you not being able to control your urges. And let's be real, we are not, I think this goes back to free will arguments, where I think there's one flaw in the libertarian mindset, which is that we are free to make our choices. And I don't really think that that's totally true.
None of us are making choices anyway.
Well, yes. And especially when we find ourselves in with these substances that are doing harm to our bodies and our minds and our relationships. So I don't know. I'm feeling a little squeamish about just legalization, no boundaries at all, blah, blah, blah.
Well, let me drop
granted, also, I think that it's really annoying when you go to Europe and you can't get freaking Tylenol at a.
That's true.
So I know this isn't.
There's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack here. Okay.
I mean, you've got me thinking about gambling, which is a whole separate thing.
So that's actually why I brought this up, because the minute you told me, legalization of drugs, I thought of gambling and how destructive it is and how addictive it is and how right now it's just a way for governments or groups to take advantage of people's psychological weaknesses and lack of free will.
So a few years ago, if you had asked me what my position on all this was, I probably would have said that I was 100% in favor of blanket legalization of all drugs, including heroin.
Right? Take responsibility for yourself. Yeah. Don't tell anybody else what to do.
Not necessarily. Society should also take responsibility, and us collectively should take responsibility for the weakest members of society. So, coupled with legalizing heroin, just as with legalizing gambling, is creating robust programs to help people who are...
Which don't exist when you profit off of people's pain.
Yes. Because
as long as they're profiting off of the pain, they're not passing legislation that's going to do that. One argument here
is like, if you legalize prostitution, say, without creating a bunch of safeguards to prevent human trafficking, are you just empowering pimps?
Right.
Right? You don't want to empower pimps. You do, I do, want to empower
sex workers
who are operating of their own accord and decide that that's the way they want to lead a fulfilling life, and those are their choices. Like, I don't want to prevent them from making those choices.
Sure.
As long as it's behavior between consenting adults, I think prostitution should be legal. But I also don't want human trafficking. Right.
Because I was about to say, like, it's one thing to have this like glorious, perfect world in your mind where everything is legal and everyone's happy. But in practice, what does it look like?
So it sounds like you're saying in that case, you'd have to make sure those other safeguards are in place before you blanket legalize something like prostitution.
Because as soon as you do, someone is going to take advantage of someone weaker, and it's not going to be pretty.
I mean, interestingly, I think it was Oregon that decriminalized basically everything on the last election cycle. And now they're walking that back.
They're criminalizing again.
I think so.
Oh, that's lame. See, I'm all about the decriminalizing. But that's because, again, here's the thing.
The social harms from drugs went up.
Yeah, but that's because they also didn't put anything in place. Basically, they were like, fine, junkies want to have your day? We're going to make everybody fucking miserable.
As I said, I was of the opinion, legalize it all, right? Sort out the rest later. I think all other things being equal, I lean toward...
And not just decriminalize, you were like, legalize. Anyone, let's have heroin dealers on the corner.
Well, at least
in a boutique.
Yeah,
heroin.
Because at least then you can have an avenue to get your heroin that it's not spiked with something else.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, heroin boutiques where someone is there to make sure you don't die.
As soon as legitimate enterprises come in, you get competition, you cut off, you end the drug war, decriminalizing isn't going to stop people's heads getting chopped off in the Mexican desert, right? Just because you're not enforcing the laws here and throwing people in jail for using doesn't mean that there is a legal provider of the substances that people want and have proven that they want. And if there's no legal provider, if the pharma companies or whoever,
I got it.
Then it's going to come across the border.
Okay.
Right? And if it's going to come across the border, then drug cartels are empowered. You also don't want to empower drug cartels and the horrific violence that they cause in other countries where human lives also matter. So anyway, the place I'm at today, though, is a new place for me.
Okay.
And I think I hit upon this when thinking about drunk driving.
Okay.
If you get arrested for drunk driving, one of the common consequences is that you lose your license.
Okay.
Or your license gets suspended.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't get prevented from drinking alcohol. You get prevented from driving. Driving wasn't the problem. The alcohol was the problem.
Yeah.
And
that's because they understand that an alcoholic who's addicted to alcohol can't actually control whether they drink or not.
And they can't be trusted with something really dangerous like an automobile, right?
Right, because they know that they can't quit the substance.
The problem is, in that scenario, there's nothing wrong with that person driving sober. In fact, they might need to drive sober, especially in America where we don't have great public transportation in lots of places. People's livelihoods, their ability to go to a job depends on them being able to drive, right? You then create people who are become dependent on the welfare state if they lose their ability to maintain their job and their employment. So what if instead you had a license for drinking? You know what I mean? Like we don't bat an eye to think that you need to be able to prove to the state that you are a responsible enough citizen to control a motor vehicle.
User. Okay.
What if you had to get a license to use heroin? And the requirements to get a heroin license are probably more strict than the requirements to get a weed license or an alcohol license, although alcohol does a lot of harm. But whatever your license is, don't think of it like a prescription where the doctor has to say, do you need it? It's like, look, I just want it.
Right.
But can you prove to us that you're a low risk for...
You're a responsible user.
Yeah. And like, how do you prove that? Well, what are the risk factors for people becoming addicts? We know that lack of community and family support is a big one.
Wait, so you're going to be like all judgmental, like how many friends do you have?
I mean, kind of, yeah. Like if the rat, this is my, I may be wrong here, but
I'm trying to imagine what this checklist is. Like, oh, you're a loser. Sorry, no heroin for you.
Yeah,
only cool people get heroin.
You're unemployed. You don't have any close family living nearby. You don't have a support network. Like the people who are. Goes back to the rat paradise experiment.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Right? For you listening, if you don't remember this experiment, although I'm not sure if this is
actually... They gave rats
actually...
a bunch of drugs, and when they were in a really sad, lonely cage with no toys, they just took the drugs and then died, like overdosed.
They drank the heroin water until
they died.
They died.
But then there's little rat paradise where they had all the toys and all the rat friends, and they would try the heroin, but then they would not die by drinking heroin.
And they'd go back to the regular water. I'm having a little niggling thought here that maybe that wasn't replicated in a further study.
I'm going to look this up. Rat
in any
paradise.
Case, what that study purports to show, and what I think is shown by other factors, is that there are genetic markers for addiction to various substances. But the thing that determines whether or not, the overarching factor that determines whether or not a substance is going to ruin someone's life, is it not replicated?
Well, so what it says is the rat park or rat paradise studies did not use methods that are reliable by current standards, whatever that means.
I'll have to look more into this. Maybe we should interview those rat park scientists.
It was in the 70s, so they might be...
Okay, well, take this all with a grain of salt. If it's true that the factors I'm mentioning, community support, opportunities for expressing a purpose, having employment, having all the things...
Getting laid.
All the things that make a life worth living. If those markers are high for a person, I think the risk of them trying heroin and then winding up under an overpass are low. Now, if your life is not going great, if you don't have a support network... Is this just
because you want to try heroin once? I feel like this whole conversation is just you wanting to try heroin once.
I don't have any... Don't tell the feds, but I don't have any compunctions about breaking the law here. I will try it, whether it's illegal or not, if I want to try it.
What's kept you from trying it? Are you afraid you'd like it and you'd end up under a bridge?
I know that I would like it. I don't think I would end up under a bridge. I kind of want to try it. I kind of want to do opium at some point. Probably not. The needle thing freaks me out, but the idea of smoking it is more appealing to me for some reason. I don't know. Michael Pollan did opium in his last book, right?
I am not even remotely interested.
He did not become a heroin addict.
You know what? You have a license, Michael Pollan.
Although we haven't heard from Michael Pollan in a while.
It's true. We haven't heard from him. Is he writing a book? Is he gone? Is he under an underpass? Michael Pollan, where are you? I'm looking this up. Michael Pollan.
So I'm just thinking, like, anytime there's a behavior in society that comes with a significant risk to...
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. One day ago, he did a speaking event, so he's okay.
Yeah. I think that it's not unreasonable to think that there might be some sort of licensing requirement. And,
I'm into this idea. It's a little bit similar to your theory that everyone should be castrated at like birth, and then once they are old enough to want to have kids, they should
opt-in fertility.
Opt-in fertility.
Yeah, it's just, can you really trust the government with that power?
Well, can you trust the government with licensing?
I mean, you could say the same thing about guns and cars. Can you really trust the government with withholding our ability to drive? And I think given how many people die every year from automobile accidents, the risk of giving the government that power is worth it. Right?
Hey, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast would not exist without your support.
We're all navigating our own personal maze.
And you don't have to be stuck in a prison cell to feel trapped in your own life.
Our mission with Labyrinths is to find growth and resilience through trauma, and we do that with a commitment to our core values.
Curiosity in a time of outrage. Compassion as a tool for understanding.
And the courage to ask hard questions and avoid easy answers. Please consider becoming a patron. Visit patreon.com/KnoxRobinson. For as little as $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes and join our online community.
We even offer signed books and live monthly video hangouts. So please, grow with us. Join our community. Visit patreon.com/KnoxRobinson. Oh, you're saying like it's a...
I'm saying
right now
it would
they're
be
not
even worse. It would be so much worse. There'd be so many more road fatalities.
If a private company, like
No.
who else would be in charge of it?
Well,
if it
nobody.
was-
There can't be anybody other than the government, right?
Okay. The only authority, the only paternalistic device we have is the government.
For something like preventing people in society from doing behavior X, yeah,
Okay.
right? So you can incentivize certain behaviors. You can there's carrots and sticks you can make. Another way of thinking about this is that everyone has a de facto license to do these various drugs, but then it gets revoked if you go over the line.
So here's the problem, though, with this whole thing is a lot of times you don't know if you're the kind of person who's going to end up under an underpass until you just become that person.
Right,
Like-
which is a great way. This is under this de facto system. You had your de facto license.
But then you're addicted. And then you're like, oh, you've had your license revoked. Too bad. Now you can't get the substance that you feel like you're going to die if you don't have it.
And you'll feel like you're going to die while you go through the withdrawals, but you have proven that you're not a good person to be taking heroin, that heroin destroys you as an effective member of society, right? You should have your ability to use heroin be prevented.
So here's
you know
what
I
I
mean?
think. It's a little bit similar to your thing. I wonder if maybe you should be like the legalization of drugs should happen more and more as you get older. So the older you are, the more things are legal for you.
And then you have something
by
to
the
look forward to when you turn 50.
Yeah, like
Great,
your
I can
50
do heroin
birthdays
now.
when you can do heroin. Yes, because you're also at a time of your life where you're like, if you fuck it up really bad, like you're on your way, you know.
You're on your way out.
Yeah, you know, like you haven't like, like now granted, that isn't to say that you can't like, you know, you might have been saving up your entire life and now you have your retirement and then you spend all of your retirement on opium. Like that can happen. So I'm not like just blanket saying that this is a thing, but I do think that, and this is similar to Michael Pollan's argument, that drugs are wasted on the young, that like drugs are, especially psychedelic drugs, but I think just drugs in general, I think make more sense in your life when you're especially like on your way out, like when your body is no longer...
A bunch of people listening to this are going to be deeply offended that you think 50 is on your way out.
So you said the number. I did not say the number. I was thinking 80, but everyone's different. It doesn't really, like, I think it's a matter of like, where are you in your body? Where are you in your life? And if you are like in the autumn years, if you are in the Novembers of your life, like, no, but this is important though, because like, I think that the whole process of diminishing, it could be enhanced in a good way by...
To me, you're making an argument that old people should use drugs.
You're
not making an argument that young people should be prevented from using drugs by the state. That's what we're talking about. Like, sure, maybe it's great for people who are on their way out to get into heroin. And I think there's potential negatives there.
Okay, acknowledged.
Right? Yeah. But if I'm, you know, on vacation and lying on a beach somewhere and I've booked a couple weeks for myself to like not have any responsibilities and
when does that happen?
I don't know. This is a fantasy that's not even really my fantasy, but it's somebody's fantasy. I want to be working more. I don't really see what's wrong with a person doing an opium trip, even when they're 22, you know?
I especially like this idea of the boutique where someone is taking care of you the whole time and you're not like just in some house potentially choking on your
Well,
own
that's the
vomit.
thing about, the mushroom legalization, psilocybin in Oregon, right? By actually legalizing it and not just decriminalizing it, they created a framework that allowed for a legal framework that allowed them to build a container around the experience in society.
Yeah.
And you have to go to a licensed place
The
and
thing
with
that
a
like
licensed
is
therapist,
still annoys me about this whole thing is that mushrooms are the safest
I know.
freaking substance.
But like, what does this look like for opium? It's like you have to go to a licensed opium den where they have experience, where they have nurses on staff.
Boutique.
And
Don't call it a den.
Den. It says bad connotations. Yeah. You go to a licensed opium boutique and you lay down in your dim, smoke-filled room on pillows.
So basically
Very
what it was
den-like
in
room.
China.
Yeah.
Like how many years? Like 200 years ago? How long ago was that when there were opium dens?
The opium wars. Yeah, we don't need, it doesn't need to look like that, but you're suggesting that, like, what does this, place look like? I mean, it might be the equivalent of like you entrust bars to have bouncers, and you entrust bartenders to not serve minors.
Yes.
They have an obligation, a duty, responsibility.
Yeah. And if
right?
somebody overdoses at this boutique, like it would lose its licensing.
So that would mean in this scenario you're painting, you're not allowed to buy opium and do it at home. You can only do it in an opium bar.
Yes.
Opium boutique.
Yeah. I think that's crucial. Because I don't think people can be trusted with
Nobody can be trusted.
In the same way that like you can't trust giving yourself anesthesia. You could kill yourself. Like you have to go to a licensed anesthesiologist.
Right. But, more people die every year from alcohol than they do from
I think
fentanyl,
there should be a license for alcohol.
You like my alcohol license idea?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, so how do you determine it? You were skeptical of my whole do you have friends argument.
I mean, I think that all of those factors, the factors of what will lead someone to become, addicted or not are way too complicated than a questionnaire. So I think the only actual practical way of doing it would be see what happens when they use it. And then if they become addicted, they lose their license and then have to go to not have to. Again, I'm sounding extremely non-libertarian, but
so
will be provided the opportunity to detox.
So it's not you need to proactively get your alcohol license.
Although I do think there should be red flags in the same way that like getting a gun, you have a red flag. Like there should be things that like if you have already in your past done certain things that might disqualify you, I think it makes sense for that. Like say, for example, you
get arrested for being on PCP and assaulting a bunch of people. That affects your alcohol license.
Then blanket, like you are not good with substances.
I could see that. I think that you're right. Better than the questionnaire or whatever to determine it. It's just like, do you have a strike against you? Have you been cited for drunken disorderly or for public urination or anything related to?
Don't go to the public urination thing because sometimes you really gotta pee and then like somebody's like in a weird I've heard stories of how drunken or public urination has been like very misused.
I know it's been misused for like sex related crimes. People have been accused of sex crimes for public urination. That seems like a misuse to me.
Right. But if you're in a park, and you're just have to pee and you can't find the bathroom and you pee in a bush, is that really a crime worth losing your alcohol license over?
Well, no, I think it's a strike. It's a point on your license,
You think that would, I don't know.
Are you drunk when it happened?
No. You couldn't find a bathroom and you had to pee and you didn't want to pee your pants.
Well, if the person citing you does a field sobriety test and they're like, okay.
Is that how that works? Does that, do you have to be drunk when they catch you publicly urinating for them to cite you with public urination?
No, in my system, it's going to be points off your alcohol license, right?
Okay.
It has to be a negative social behavior related to inebriation, whatever it is.
So it's not just like you're out in the woods and you're feeling really woodsy and somebody happens to stumble upon you while you're peeing.
Any negative social behavior.
I think I've just revealed that I have no qualms about going pee in a park. Because sometimes those bathrooms are horrible.
It's true. You don't want the whole park to be like that. You got to contain the stink to one small space.
I wish they would clean them more often. Anyway.
All right. So any negative social behavior that is citable by law, that is related to inebriation, drunk driving, public intoxication, drunken disorderly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assault if you're also, drunk, right? Any other crime in which you're also drunk, it's like an aggravating factor, right? That thing goes, and you have to be some system. You have a certain number of points, and if you go below a certain point threshold, your license gets suspended. And this would all have to be digital on your license.
What disqualifies you from being able to get a gun?
That's a good question. I generally think that these conversations will be more interesting if we do less looking at phones.
Well, I know that, but I also think that other people who have producers looking stuff up for them get to have all these fun things. Anyway, whatever. I just think it would be like, what would disqualify you from getting a gun? Any crime. But I'm wondering, does that for your, does doing any crime, even if you're not
No, I
drunk?
think it has to be related to alcohol or other substances. Yeah.
Okay.
If anything that proves that you are irresponsible when mentally altered, is the thing that should prevent you from getting access to those things.
All right.
And it could be a suspension.
All right. You're coming up with your system. We get it.
I think can you poke holes in this? What's the steel man against this, Why is this a bad way to do it?
I mean, how do you enforce it? Does that still mean that people are being put into prison? How do you tell if a person who's had their driver's license revoked, how do you tell if they're driving or not? Do they have to be pulled over by a cop eventually?
They do.
So a person who has his license revoked might still be using heroin all the frickin' time, unless they're in heroin boutiques.
Well, it's a combo system, right? I mean, this is why you hold bartenders responsible and not the drunks that they serve, right? Like if someone gets their license revoked for alcohol and you find them drinking under an overpass, it's like, okay, well, where'd you get the booze, buddy? Oh, you bought it at this corner store? That guy didn't scan your license to see that your alcohol license was revoked?
Okay, but
that guy gets in trouble.
Here's something that I think is potentially a hole to poke. This is suggesting that there are spaces that are designated for substance use. I imagine that children would not be welcome in any of these spaces. And one thing that I find extremely annoying about the United States as opposed to Europe is how strictly regulated any space that sells alcohol is, so that you're just trying to hang out with your friends, but you can't anymore because you have kids, and you can't bring alcohol to a public park with you just to share a glass of wine with friends while your kids are playing on the playground. That's annoying, but that's also a consequence of the system that you're suggesting.
I mean, it is for things like heroin, which I think I'm sort of with you on confining to a boutique experience. I might even be interested in confining guns to gun range. You want to shoot guns for fun? Cool. Go do it at a gun range.
I think that's 100%. I'm surprised that's still not a thing, considering the amount of people who die by shootings in this country. I mean, I think I would allow rifles for hunting. But for handguns, there's no point of handguns other than shooting people. No.
You want to play with those guns, there's a place to play with them. Yeah.
What about home safety?
I mean, the ideal weapon for home safety is not a handgun.
Shotgun.
It's like a short barrel shotgun.
Right. So are those allowed to be at home? Everyone's allowed to have a short barrel shotgun at home.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll revisit this.
Okay.
Another who's right. But, you know, things like alcohol and marijuana, I think, are different than heroin. I don't think I would confine marijuana to only boutiques.
What about alcohol?
God, it's just so ubiquitous in the culture. It's like trying to get from A to B sounds impossible. I think there are plenty of people who have proven that they are responsible alcohol users.
Mm-hmm. The majority of people?
Yeah. The majority of people aren't drunk driving, at least in contemporary society. It used to be way more common, but disincentivizing it, messaging, education.
Giving alternatives.
Yeah. Creating other ways for people to get where they need to go did work to a large degree. And now most people who drink alcohol are not drunk driving. And they're not doing domestic violence, and they're not drunk and disorderly. There is some small persistent percentage of people who are doing those behaviors, and we don't want those people to have alcohol. I mean, we don't want them to do those behaviors, but if someone is inclined to beat their domestic partner and alcohol is the thing that tips them over that inclination, until and unless we can fix that behavior pattern in them, God, just don't give them alcohol. You know, they should not be allowed to have alcohol, I think.
So then alcohol should be in a controlled space.
No, it just means that you need to have a licensing system to purchase it.
I see, to purchase it.
Yeah,
okay.
And it doesn't mean that you can't get your friend to buy you beer or show up at a friend's barbecue.
But then But then you have to hold the person who gave them the beer responsible.
Yeah, and if you're hosting a barbecue and your friend who has a suspended alcohol license shows up and they get drunk at your barbecue and then they do a crime, they drunk drive or whatever, and it's like, well, I didn't know he had I suppose there's... Are you checking your friends' licenses at your family barbecue? This is getting complicated.
It is getting a little complicated, but I mean,
I think the other side of this is you also need to be providing robust mental health care,
detoxing,
substance abuse care on the other side of this, right?
Yeah, obviously. Okay, I think we agree.
Heroin only in boutiques. Let's run through it. Ugh. Alcohol license, weed license.
I mean, I think there should be substance licenses.
Okay, now what about like gambling? Do you get a gambling license?
I think this is out of the purview of our discussion. We can have this in another one.
All right. I think a lot of people are going to disagree with us on this.
I'm fine with that. I'd be interested to hear their arguments. Yeah. It seems kind of obvious to me, but of course, something that's obvious to me is not necessarily obvious.
Should substances be prohibited, legal,
decriminalized, licensed?
How do you draw the line between substances? Is there a notable difference between behaviors like gambling or prostitution and drug use? Inquiring minds, us, want to know. So tell us your thoughts, poke holes in our crazy theories. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for the next Who's Right, please do chime in.
Let us know.
As always, you can find us on Twitter
at Amanda Knox,
at Man Under Bridge,
on Instagram at Amamanox,
at MC Carbon.
You can follow all of our work at amandaknox.com.
And I don't think we have anything more to say.
Bleh.
Bleh.